The first clue was the blinking light. I was making coffee at 6 a.m. when I noticed my whole home battery system had switched to backup mode overnight, even though the grid never went down. That doesn't happen by accident. Those systems cost more than a used car, and I should know because I install them for a living. My name is Grant Ashford. I'm 44, single, and I run a small solar and battery installation business outside Asheville, North Carolina. After 10 years wiring other people's houses, I finally installed a top-of-the-line system on my own. Battery wall, smart panel, the works. Because after a bad ice storm 2 winters ago, I promised myself I'd never sit in the dark again. I bought a house at the end of a cul-de-sac in a subdivision called Pine Hollow specifically because it backed up to a creek, not a clubhouse. Quiet was the whole plan. Then I met Gail Prescott. Gail was the head of Pine Hollow's Community Standards Committee, a title she invented herself after the actual HOA. Board got tired of her, showing up to meetings uninvited. She measured mailbox heights with a laser level. She once fined a widow 2 houses down for a non-compliant garden gnome. Her favorite sentence was, "I'm just trying to protect everyone's investment," usually said right before she made someone's life miserable. For 2 years, I stayed out of her way. Then my battery started acting like it belonged to someone else. I pulled up my monitoring app, the same one I set up for dozens of clients, and watched in real time as my battery drained itself down to 20%. At 2 in the afternoon on a clear sunny day. That should never happen. I walked the property line and found it. A heavy-duty extension cord running from my exterior junction box, through the hedge, straight into Gail's backyard, where it fed a set of festoon lights, 2 space heaters, and what I can only describe as a small outdoor movie theater. I found Gail standing in the middle of it holding a clipboard. "Gail, why is my battery system running your backyard?" She didn't even look up from her clipboard. "That outlet is on the property line. It's shared infrastructure." "It's not shared. I paid $40,000 for that system." "Grant, don't be dramatic. We're hosting the fall social there this year. The board approved outdoor power for the event. The board doesn't own my battery." She finally looked at me, the same look she probably used on the garden gnome lady. "You should really consider being more of a team player around here." I unplugged the cord myself. The next morning it was plugged back in. Run through a different outlet I hadn't even realized was on that circuit. So I did what I do for a living. I went to my monitoring software and pulled the full load history, timestamps, wattage, every device signature, and quietly built a file. Here's the thing about a battery backup system most people don't know. It's not just storage. It's a load management system. It decides automatically what gets power and in what priority when demand spikes past what the grid, feed, and battery combined can handle. Mine was programmed the way I program every client's system. Refrigerator and medical equipment first, everything else after. I had never bothered to add Gail's illegal load into that priority list, because it wasn't supposed to exist at all. 3 days later, glossy flyers went up on every mailbox. Pine Hollow's Fall Harvest Social. Live band, food trucks, a full lighting display, and at the bottom in small print, power generously provided by our neighbors on Birchwood Court. That was me. I hadn't agreed to anything. I emailed Gail, the board, and the property manager that morning. "You do not have permission to draw power from my residential battery system for any event." I attached the load logs and photos of the cord running through my hedge. Nobody replied. By 4 that afternoon, Gail's backyard looked like a state fair. String lights, a popcorn machine, 2 commercial-grade speakers, a taco truck's generator, hooked to my outdoor outlet for just a top-off, and roughly 60 people standing on her lawn. I sat on my porch and watched my battery percentage drop on my phone in real time. 40%, 30, 25. I want to be honest about what happened next, because people still argue with me about it. I did not touch a single wire. I had warned her. I had emailed the board. I had unplugged the cord once already and watched her plug it back in somewhere else. So when the load crossed the threshold, I'd set years earlier to protect my own refrigerator and my elderly neighbor's oxygen concentrator, which was also on my emergency circuit through a mutual aid agreement we'd set up after the ice storm. The system did exactly what it was built to do. It cut every non-essential load on the property, instantly without warning, to protect what mattered. The speakers died mid-song. The string lights went dark. The popcorn machine sputtered out. And on a stage at the front of the yard, Gail was holding a microphone mid-sentence, thanking our generous neighbor on Birchwood Court for making tonight's celebration possible. The microphone died in her hand. For about 4 seconds, nobody understood what was happening. Then the taco truck's cooler alarm started beeping, because it too had been drawing off my line, and somewhere in the dark, a dog started barking at the sudden silence. Gail spun around, spotted me sitting on my porch with my phone in my hand, and marched across the lawn so fast she left both her shoes stuck in the mulch. What did you do? Nothing. My system protected its priority loads. That's what it's designed to do. You did this on purpose. No, Gail, you ran a taco truck and 200 watts of speakers off a residential battery. I told you in writing not to touch. She pointed at me in front of 60 of our neighbors. You're going to pay for this. Technically, she was the one who ended up paying. The next morning, an HOA notice was on my door. $2,000 for disruption of a sanctioned community event. 2 days after that, code enforcement showed up because someone had reported me for operating unpermitted commercial power equipment. I handed the inspector my licensing, my system certification, and the load logs showing exactly whose devices had been drawing off my circuit. He left 20 minutes later, and the citation went the other direction, straight to Gail, for unauthorized use of private utility infrastructure. Then the neighbors started talking. Turns out, Gail had been billing the HOA for event power rental for 3 years running, small line items buried in the landscaping budget, money that was supposed to be paying for a generator the association technically already owned and that nobody had seen in 2 years. A former treasurer, still bitter about being pushed off the board, forwarded me an old email from Gail. No need to buy a new unit this year. We'll manage power informally. I'll square the budget after. I sent that email, along with my full load logs, to the property manager and, once I understood the dollar amounts involved, to the county consumer affairs office. Gail didn't back down quietly. She printed a flyer titled The Truth About Grant, Ashford, accusing me of sabotaging a community event out of spite and operating unsafe experimental battery equipment next to family homes. Someone posted my monitoring footage in the neighborhood Facebook group instead, timestamps, load graphs, the whole thing, plus my written warning email from a week before the party. The comments were not kind to Gail. At the emergency HOA meeting, she showed up with a binder, ready to prosecute me for ruining her event. The property manager asked one question. Did Grant give you written permission to draw power from his battery system? She started talking about shared infrastructure and community goodwill. He asked again. She finally said, not in writing. No! Then the old treasurer read the email out loud, the one about squaring the budget later, and the room went very quiet. Someone in the back asked where 3 years of event power rental line items had actually gone. Within a month, Gail was removed from every committee she'd invented for herself. The county opened a financial review of the landscaping budget. My legal fees for the whole mess were reimbursed by the HOA's insurer, who settled fast once they saw the load logs and the email in the same file. Every fine against me was erased in writing. The last time I saw Gail, she wasn't holding a clipboard. She dropped an envelope in my mailbox, a formal apology, unsigned by hand, clearly written by a lawyer, and drove off without knocking. My battery system still sits exactly where it always did, quietly protecting a fridge, an oxygen machine next door, and nothing else that isn't mine. People ask if I feel bad about letting the lights go out on her in front of 60 guests. Honestly, no. I didn't cut a single wire. I just stopped subsidizing someone who'd already decided my property was hers to use. So tell me, was I wrong to let the system do exactly what I built it to do? Or does someone like Gail only ever learn the lesson when the power actually goes out on them? Have you ever had a neighbor, a board member, or anyone with a little borrowed authority treat your things like community property? Drop your verdict in the comments, and if you've ever watched someone finally lose the lights they'd been stealing, subscribe for more.